Welcome back to FreightWaves Now on this Tuesday morning. We've got our intermodal expert, CPG expert. He does all of the above, Mike Baudendistel, with us today, talking all about what's going on in his Stock Out newsletter this week. Mike, welcome to FreightWaves Now. Hopefully you had a good 4th of July weekend as well.
I did, yeah. Thanks for having me.
I feel like 4th of July is pretty good in the CPG market, right? You're getting all of the goods that you need for your barbecues and for your parties, and
It's
you're out
good for the fireworks industry, I would imagine.
Good for the fireworks industry as well. Mike, how was your 4th of July? What are retail companies and CPG companies seeing from the uptick for the holiday buying?
Yeah, good 4th of July. It was nice down here in Dallas. So a couple of big CPG companies reported earnings last week, and most are going to report sort of in mid-July, but sort of two bellwethers reported last week, General Mills and McCormick, and really the results were strong. I think that, a lot of the analysts, going into this year sort of expected that CPG companies, their revenue and earnings would really fall off sort of after the big sort of buying binge last year. That really hasn't materialized. I mean, General Mills, their guidance is for sales down 1% to 3%, profit down, flat to down 2%. So we're not, and those are off of, against very difficult comps, versus a year ago. So we're not really seeing those big declines. I mean, McCormick, their, revenue is growing, even if you exclude their acquisition, sort of mid-single digits. So these CPG companies seem to be doing better than people had anticipated because people are still doing a lot of cooking at home, eating at home. Those things are still well above pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah, it really is amazing. As we learned from Anthony Smith earlier in the show, is the durable goods sales hasn't been affected negatively either. So this pressure continues. What are we looking for? You said there's more earnings that'll come out later in July. I suspect that they would be fairly good too. But moving through the summer, are we thinking the same thing? Let's just stay strong, or as maybe international travel starts to open up eventually, you think that'll be the downward pressure? Or?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, as the other, big CPG companies report, I think we'll get some more detail on, what they're thinking about in terms of price increases. I mean, most of the big CPG companies have announced, price increases, and some of those are pretty significant. And we're seeing, various, constituents within the supply chain, react to that pricing pressure. A lot of the grocery wholesalers are stockpiling certain items that, have a long shelf life. Same thing with retailers. And I still think it remains to be seen, how consumers are ultimately going to react to, seeing higher prices on some of the goods that they typically buy. That really those type of price increases that they have not seen since at least 2018, if not before then.
Mike, so one of my friends asked me yesterday, she was talking about how she kind of has this like rough knowledge about delays at the ports and inflationary pressures and some shortages that are going on in the industry. And she was like, I'm worried about running out of food at the grocery store. Is that a threat? And I told her, no, like it should be fine. You're going to see possibly some inflationary pressure, some higher prices. Confirm that with me, that I was telling her the right things.
She's not going to run out of food. There may be items that she likes that she would like to buy that she is not able to buy. And I can give you a good statistic on this is typically, a grocery store will submit an order to a wholesaler and about 90% of it is filled. About 10% they just don't have, they, didn't fill it. Now it's about 80%. So they're not, wholesalers aren't filling as many items as before. So call it a 10% delta versus what's typical. So she may go to the grocery store and not see her favorite items, but it's not like she's going to starve.
Yeah, it should be. So, but along those same lines, where are those items? What are the different items that you would expect to see that from? Right? Would it be more that are imported, or is it domestically produced that would be more pressure to the inflation and maybe stockouts?
It could be either one. I mean, there are some food items that are imported. I mean, think of things like rice and some of these ethnic foods. But at the same time, I mean, there's been issues in the domestic supply chain in things like meats, where a lot of the meat companies haven't had enough employees to run the facility. So it could be either of those things.
And we talked to Nick Austin a little bit earlier in our growing season, kind of about weather pressures when it comes to some of those crops. Are you seeing any issues with crops being harvested and put out? We're not quite to harvest season yet, but is there any threat in kind of shortages in that area?
Yeah, I think that's maybe the biggest issue going forward here. I mean, particularly for the crops that are very sort of water intensive, like the big one is almonds in the West Coast. So 80% of the almonds in the world are grown in California, and almonds are very water intensive, much more so than other crops. And so, some of the farmers out there have basically had to take bulldozers and bulldozed almond trees, and it's kind of sad reading about their quotes on those. I really love those trees and hate to see them go. They still had a few more years of growth in there. So I definitely think it's going to be a big impact, and we'll see if that maybe provides some support for agriculture prices, which actually have come down pretty significantly if you think of corn futures and soybean futures from their highs in May. But I do think that's one of the big topics I'm going to dig into is the weather issues in the western states.
Yeah, that's a good point. Those weather issues, having those severe pressures. Not good news for almonds. I love almonds.
Mike, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. His newsletter, The Stockout, comes out later this week. And of course, you can catch The Stockout show here on FreightWaves TV. That's on Friday afternoons.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mike.